Welcome to the Simple Minds podcast, where six mates unpack three topics over a new drink each week. Fuck it, just go with that. We'll fix it if it's...
All right, welcome to the show, everybody. That's right, this show must go on in some way, shape or form, but it's Matt Hannum here. I'm today's host for the show. And I'm joined, unfortunately, but as always, by Conrad. Kanye. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you, man.
Are you well?
Lovely to see you. A few times this week, actually.
Yeah, we have seen each other a few times. It's always a pleasure.
For you.
Jacob.
Hey, Matt.
How are you?
Excited for this one.
Mike.
Hey man, how are you?
Are you going to speak today, Jacob? I'm excited if you're going to speak, bro. Because that's why I'm here.
Oh, this one's going well. So we probably should release some of the last 5 minutes of audio that has been captured. But anyway, JB, nice to see you. So if this couldn't get any worse, we're going to dig very deep into philosophy right now. So today...
You missed someone.
No, I said Mike.
Oh, shit, I missed it then.
Glitch in the system.
I missed it too. That black cat.
Okay. Well, I apologise for the feedback in the last 45 seconds. Welcome to the show. Today
Have we started?
We've started, mate. We've well and truly started. Shall we start again?
No,
we're not starting again. So today we're going to start by delving deep into philosophy. Thanks, Mike. Mm-hmm. So we're going to unpack the question, are we living in a simulation? And then we're going to lighten things up by discussing how you can write your own eulogy and live your best life. Conrad?
I didn't think you were going to introduce that because I didn't know whether we were going to get the time to do that.
We're going to get the time to do that.
Okay.
Mike, over to you.
What about
Whoa.
drink today?
That's right. That's right.
It was bought from the Salvation Army.
It was. Actually, I didn't buy it. It was a gift.
It's a gift because it was a rebought drink.
Okay. So...
Andrew listens to this when he does the cutting up.
Andrew's going to love it. Andrew's going to love this.
You. Thanks for buying the drink from Salvation Army.
I'm not sure he's done that, but if he did, that would have been quite all right because it was a gift from Andrew Murphy, a good friend of ours, and I don't really mind where he got it from, whether he was given it as a gift or whether he bought it from the Salvation Army, which last I checked, I don't think they sell alcohol, but you never know.
Hey, they need to probably look at their range then.
They probably do. Anyway, guys, you already have a drink out, which is why I forgot about what we were doing here. And so we're drinking today Monkey Shoulder. It's a batch 27 smooth and rich blended malt Scotch whiskey. Ooh. I brought it in for two reasons. Actually three, if you ask Conrad, because I was cheaping out because the bottle had a drink out of... there was about 12 mils missing.
Let's not ask me then.
12 mils missing from the top of the bottle. But I brought it in for two reasons. One is it was a gift from Andrew Murphy, who just was wanting to say thank you for, our relationship that we have, and we work together, and the last couple of years we've done a lot of business and a lot of great things together, and he wanted to say thank you. But the other reason is I'm going to a whiskey night tonight, and it seemed like a good place to start into having a whiskey. So this is his favourite drink, and he decided to share a bottle. I don't know that answer.
And the funny thing is that I came across this drink when I was in Malaysia back in 2016. Monkey Shoulder. I thought it was actually quite a funny name. The Yugoslav team was drinking it, celebrating someone's birthday. Around this time, 2 years ago. Crazy.
It's a great bottle. I love the monkeys. Chimps.
Does anybody desire ice?
Kind of funny, right?
You all did have ice.
Talking about simulation
melted
and
down.
having monkeys.
Cheers.
We're all chimps anyway.
Cheers.
So cheers.
Be careful, you'll break those glasses.
Cheers.
They're second hand as well.
That was probably one of the best introductions we've ever had into the show.
That's brilliant.
Let's just record that every show. Just change the bits out.
Yeah,
That is
exactly.
that's beautiful.
It is nice, isn't it? It is
Monkey
smooth, as they say.
Very smooth. This is going to be
Let's dig in, Mike.
I was going to say it's going to be an interesting one. Simulation theories, whiskey. Just need to produce a spliff now, and we've got the Joe Rogan podcast on. And Elon Musk. Is Elon Musk in the house?
We might run that in your office next time.
Yeah, it is illegal in WA though, so we obviously would not be doing that.
Yeah, we don't do drugs on this show.
just alcohol.
Fucking, you're going to get shut down. We haven't even fucking got paid.
So the one part of science, I suppose, that still is a complete mystery is the conscience. Like what is it that is in our head that is creating what we see? And over time, philosophers have pondered this question, and there's actually a reference back to episode 24 here, which was Plato's allegory of the cave, where Plato thought that people were really just seeing shadows on the wall, so existence wasn't real. There were. So this sort of the simulation theory argument has been around for a long time. As I said, from Plato and his allegory of the cave. So if you refer back to episode 24, and go and have a listen to that and work out what's going on there. Through to René Descartes as well, who is a French philosopher, I think around about the 1600s, who questioned everything around him. I've got a quote from him, which is, "I suppose, therefore, that all things I see are illusions. I believe that nothing has ever existed of everything my lying memory tells me. I think I have no senses. I believe that body, shape, extension, motion, location are functions. What is there then that can be taken as true? Perhaps only this one thing, that nothing at all is certain." So philosophers throughout time, and I think mankind has always questioned reality. What is it that we're seeing? And of course, the modern day philosophers, the Wachowski brothers, from the late 1900s.
Well,
Actually, it is the late 1900s. 1996, I think they released.
but they're not brothers anymore, bro.
Oh, really?
They've had a sex change. They're both now sisters.
Really?
True story.
Really? I didn't know that.
True story.
Are you sure? I will note that one down to check.
Feel free to test my facts. I'll have a half-drunk drink
Wachowski
from
sisters released The Matrix in about 1996. And that was, I think, one of the first sort of major delves into the simulation theory that the main population has sort of delved into, and it blew a few people's minds, and it obviously is one of the most amazing movies of all time. And I have a quote from our friend Morpheus from The Matrix. "What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain." So I've, over the last few years, delved deeper into philosophy, and these are the sort of things that really excite me, and I love putting myself on not putting myself on a different level, but thinking harder about these sort of things, because it opens up your eyes to lots of different ideas that you may normally not just be looking at the cave and seeing the shadows, like looking a little bit outside the box to get a little bit of inspiration, or just to let the brain run free a little bit. And I don't know when I found this paper by a gentleman, I think he's Swedish, he's from Scandinavia, Nick Bostrom, who wrote a paper in 2003 called "Are We Living in a Simulation?" And the sort of premise for the paper is that technology somewhere down the track for humans is going to get to the stage that the computing power will be enough to create a simulation of life and consciousness. And I actually just wanted to quickly bring JB in on this one, because you're obviously not creating full computer simulations for humankind, but you're in the virtual reality game, I suppose. And I'd ask you the question, with the rate of technology changing, can you see or foresee in the future that they do get to a stage where virtual reality simulations could mimic what we see now as consciousness for humans? Or over the last 100 years, how it's changed?
I guess we're going to start here. My business is essentially creating virtual worlds.
Yep.
So, the purpose of our business is actually to visually connect people to the unbuilt. And that's essentially what we do. And the computing power is evolving. And I've seen some stuff which is really fascinating around, I guess, more from the technical aspect of real-time rendering and AI and these other elements. But I guess, which you touched, that paper that we read, there was 3 scenarios as well, which is, you might get there. In short, to simply answer the question from...
And we're not talking just in 20 years, but I mean, Earth has been around or universe has been around for 13 billion
I think the
years.
possibility of it from a technical standpoint is possible.
Yeah.
More from a hardware perspective. From a software perspective, humans currently, or even in the future, are not capable of creating the algorithms or the system to support. If this was an actual computer program, where we are right now, it's impossible to conceive that it was by human to the nth degree. But the software component, it would have to be constructed or exponential by an AI itself, in my view.
Well, he delves quite deep into that in the paper where he talks about the algorithms, computer power, and he projects that into the future currently based on what we've kind of got, and says that it is feasible that this could happen.
Because the simple stuff that we do, which I guess, and even then, the amount of human input, the limitation is the input and the aspects. Humans currently, with obviously
definitely not currently, but say in 10,000 years, we're talking the rate of technology
possibly,
changes,
but I mean you never know, right?
But this is the sort of whole premise of the argument, is that it is going to maybe be possible
virtual
for this to happen.
well, in the short term, within the next 10 to 15 years, there will be virtual worlds that people will interact, and that is definite.
Okay, so what about in 10,000 years, in 20,000 years?
Yeah, sure.
Because that's what he's looking at. He's not looking at sort of short-term stuff. He's looking at the possibility that a million years from now, that an intelligence has got to a stage where it can recreate a virtual world.
Sure.
Okay.
But
of course it's plausible. It's plausible. That's plausible.
And that's the kind of whole...
But it would be from what my current understanding and knowledge, and only from the short time that's spent on it, it would only seem feasible by an AI.
But that's what Musk said as well. Musk agrees with that.
Let's bring that back then.
Because the human brain
can't do that.
A single human does not have the intellectual capacity, even in genetic evolution. I'm no scientist and no authority in this, but our brain capacity will not outbeat once the AI starts to take off in the next 10 to 20 years.
I think he probably bases some of the argument on that we'd create AI that can maybe do this sort of thing.
But you're making the assumption that AI doesn't take over and start doing things, and this is what Elon Musk is talking about in relation to, well, how do you get the human to regulate the AI when the AI is actually smarter than the human?
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the quantum issue that they're having.
Yep.
Is where are the controls, checks and brakes, and all that stuff.
So that initial question was just to get an answer. Is it going to be maybe feasible that it could happen in the future? Because that's what the whole paper is based on.
The short answer is yes, and even in the short term, you will be putting headsets on, and that will become the norm.
Or contact lenses or whatever.
Well, that's happening with Facebook stuff right now.
Yeah. And it'll become the norm.
So the argument goes then, if that is the case, if we use that,
we can already recreate apartments and buildings and stuff.
Yeah, blank canvas, by the way.
That's right.
So the premise is there's then three things that it could possibly be. The following propositions Nick Bostrom puts out then, based on that fact that it is possible in the future, be it 10,000, 1,000, 100 years in the future, that it will be possible to create a simulation. Number one, that the human species is very likely to go extinct before we actually reach that level of power. Number two,
that one I actually disagree with to a point. I believe
it's very very plausible that we would.
That's very plausible, but we're also, based on some stuff that I've been reading, and this goes back to the book that we discussed yesterday, the Origin book that Dan Brown recently released. There's a part in that book where he talks about at the moment that the next evolution actually exists, and it is AI, it's computers, robotics, right? It's the first time in the history of the world where two species, dominant species, have existed, because it's taken the extinction of one to see birth of the other.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't looked at it in that.
So right now you've got two what we call species acting out as one right now, or in one space.
Yeah.
For the first time in history. Now Elon Musk touched on the fact that we ourselves are cyborgs.
Yeah,
With the extension of the mobile phone,
and technology.
and he's got that new company which he's starting up and recruiting within Neuralink, where he's believing that the technology he is going to try to establish is going to allow us to keep pace with AI. Now, what we don't understand, because we as human beings are living older, all right?
Yep.
Over history time, we have gotten to
Definitely, yeah.
we are living older, so it's completely plausible that in the future we could live longer without necessarily coming to an extinction.
Yeah, but extinction could be a meteor hitting the planet or some natural disaster that wipes us out completely, or disease or whatever it is.
Okay, but I would then presume that that's going to take out technology, one.
Exactly. So that's the argument: is that the human species is likely to go extinct before we even reach that post-human stage where we can create the simulation. Number two is that any post-human civilization is extremely unlikely to run a significant number of the simulations of their evolutionary history for various reasons, ethical, moral. They just are bored and they don't want to do it. Like they're just not going to run the simulation because of a factor.
Yeah. A good way to put that into perspective is if we look at something that's truly inferior to us. Like the assumption here is that these post-humans are significantly superior
More
to us.
evolved,
Like not just an evolution, like a 1.1, like they're 10x what we are.
A bit like Conrad.
It's true. Conrad's like 90% of the way there. If you look at it's like us modeling ants, for example. Like,
Why would they even bother with
Yeah.
it? Is a sort of
what are you going to get from it? It's not important. They're just so inferior that it's just not worthwhile. That's kind of the argument behind point two.
yeah. And obviously point three, which is the good one,
Yeah,
the beefy one,
I think so.
is that we are currently living in a simulation. Because if it's plausible for that to happen in the future, it is most likely that we will be living in a simulation right now. Because to create a simulated universe, he talks about this in the paper, that there'd have to be 7 billion separate simulations all running at the one time, if it was going to be individual simulations for the whole population of the planet, which kind of creates that multiverse thought as well, like there's other things running at the same time. And quantum physics talks about this sort of similarity between two different, like I think they're looking at like what's the quantum, is it proton or not?
Oh, like the Higgs boson.
Yeah, Higgs boson.
That,
yeah. They replicate each other in miles apart. They can still replicate each other. The movement of one will be replicated with the movement of others. So this multiverse sort of idea. So I suppose that what I love with this is that when you initially say the possibility is that we're living in a simulation, it's like, it's ridiculous. Like you think that's just a stupid question. It's like the bloody flat earthers, who are stupid, by the way.
They still exist, buddy.
they
They might be all in
Not
India.
in my simulation, they won't. But then when you actually put down the arguments and sort of mathematically lay it out, it's like, shit, it is actually possible. And what I love about it is it opens up like the Descartes and the Plato's, it opens up your ideas of what perception is, I suppose. And that's a really good and deep thing for a human to think about, is what it is that we're really seeing. Because what we're seeing anyway is just electrons and light, and it's our brain interpreting whatever's happening, the energy that's in front of us anyway. So we're already kind of in a simulation naturally or universally.
Why is it? Why
Why what?
is it a good thing to?
Think about it. I don't know, because it
I'll
opens
answer
up your eyes to lots of things. It makes you look at things slightly differently, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Like even just thinking about it, it makes your perception shift slightly.
So okay, fine. Let's indulge this one, right?
Yeah.
So if it does make you look at something differently, is it differently enough to take any different action?
Maybe.
Well,
It's going to be up to the individual. Yes, for me, yeah. I just think any different perception of something is going to put you into a different.
so you're of the opinion that there could be a matrix going on at the moment,
Yes,
and so what have you done differently to someone that doesn't?
that's a good question.
So you have a different thought, okay,
Well-
and you paused when I asked about what differences you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, That's an interesting question. I mean, I'm number one thinking about it, so I'm using my brain a little bit more.
So you've acquired knowledge,
Yep.
and you're doing nothing with it.
I'll
Hang
let
on.
Michael
Can I
think.
rewind? You said you do think we're currently in a simulation.
Yeah, he did.
Well, based on just
I believe we are in some construct. To me, it makes sense. To me, that makes sense. But I know what I do differently to most people.
Which is?
I take massive action with things that I fucking believe need to be taken action with. I don't tell fucking stories that aren't true.
My journey to philosophy and thinking, and this is philosophy. This is putting your brain and perception into a different realm. Has changed the way I think and act.
So what are you doing differently? That because this is a big thing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm happy to play in this space. But if this is a big thing that you're prepared to say you believe, what is it that you're doing differently with this compared to somebody that doesn't believe?
I don't know, certain actions during the day. I mean, I don't know.
Like what?
I don't know, Conrad. What? The way you think
Should drive the way you act.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what if, all right, tomorrow we find out. I'm going on Conrad because
Oh wait, let's not all turn to me.
Conrad said he agreed. So let's,
I agree with him. So I want to know what you're doing differently.
because
I would argue that you might have
Well,
the
I'm
beauty of the
looking at
knowledge.
situations with humans differently. Okay,
Yeah.
with interactions with my children, like
How differently? Let's define this.
because my question.
Because this is what's going to be plausible to somebody on the other end, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is I was going to
So
go.
I'm prepared to go with you guys on this one because this actually comes back to the experiment I wanted to do quite funnily, all right? But we don't have the camera set up for me to show you.
Well, in an interesting way, it does actually delve into the eulogy element too.
It
because
does.
My question is like, all right, say we're in a simulation and you find out tomorrow Morpheus approaches you, red pill, blue pill, and it's a simulation. Mm-hmm. Then what?
Yeah.
you fucking enjoy it because if it is, then I can guarantee you. I said I want that adventure. Throw me in that experience. Let's fucking go for that for a few decades.
Sure. But it's quite funny because when I bring it back to the Matrix, right, and when Neo died at the end of the Matrix, the only thing that resuscitated him within the Matrix was love. All right, the only thing, he was dead, right? It was said before he went, what if you die in the Matrix, you die outside of the Matrix because the brain can't exist without the body, or the body can't exist without the brain. Yeah? But he died and was resuscitated by love.
Yep.
So when I say I do things differently, I honestly look at love and I try to come from a place of love in every situation
Yep.
Because
that's the only way to live.
Well, because the interesting thing, I was thinking about this when we were watching it. If we are in a simulation, they've only given us, like if you think about controls and you think about the hack codes or cheats or the rules of the game, whoever created the simulator only gave us really one thing or two things to play with. And that is a decision and action. When you strip everything away, we only have two buttons.
Yeah.
Decision and action. And so even if it was a simulation, you find out tomorrow, and I guess it comes back to the point, why? Like, what does this change
Well,
the
it doesn't actually
perspective?
change anything in
So
regards to,
what's-
because you are, it's like René
So what's
Descartes
the
said.
point in indulging in
Well, to
the depth
activate
of
the
it?
brain, to get your brain moving, thinking about different realms. I mean, maybe actually probably
For what reason? For relaxation?
No, just to activate my brain, to keep it moving. You know, getting older. And actually, I use it more as a spiritual thing as well.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Now we're playing. Let's
Because
go.
I'm not a religious person. I'm not an atheist.
No, but
think
you are a
I
spiritual
believe
person.
in something different.
Yep.
And maybe this gives me a little answer to what that difference might be, I suppose.
But is then spirituality is this is another topic I want to talk about, faith or belief. Spirituality, do you need to have a structure? If that gives you something to believe in, does that not then counter produce what spirituality is?
Well, because if you believe it's a simulation, there was a relationship in the podcast that if you actually strip it away, it sounds a lot like religion and Christianity and a lot of the other fables
This
out
is a
there.
God creator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not an atheist if you believe
I
it's a
didn't say I
simulation.
was an atheist.
No,
I said I wasn't
but then it's going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But I guess what could you do with that, or what are you doing?
What are you doing with the information you
I'm
have?
curious too, with Conrad's question.
Me personally.
Yeah, is this helping you discover other realms of yourself, or
Well,
what does this do
it's
for your
helping my
life?
curiosity for life in general, sort of just helping me question things, I suppose. So maybe stopping and questioning why this maybe happened, or why I'm here. So, and I'm still working on that, as we all are until the day we die. I think working on, because none of us. And this is the whole thing, that nobody knows what consciousness actually is. So suppose arguments like this help you maybe go down a different path of what
I've got a point. I've got a point for you. And I just happened to be coincidentally researching this more because I was going to talk about it, but I thought I'd leave it.
What do you mean coincidentally? You didn't. You
Fuck,
didn't,
it's
you
here,
didn't do
man.
it-
It's
you didn't do the
good. I
work?
didn't plan it. It's fucking here. Knowing does not create faith. Unknowing does.
Say that again.
Knowing does not create faith. Unknowing does.
Okay.
So if you're going on this search path of knowing,
Actually, now that you sort of bring that up, or that statement, to me, I suppose it's getting me into a place where you can kind of put everything into your life because you know that you're probably going to be okay. Like there is something else. There is something else
yeah.
above or
For sure.
controlling us. So you can kind of put everything into what you currently are. And the Buddhists talk about that as, everything is one. And as humans, we're just little nodes, an expression of that oneness as humans. And that's all we've got. So suppose if you kind of look at it like that, it's like, oh, this is my little chance to enjoy this part of whatever existence is. So I suppose maybe there, but it's not changed my habits for breakfast or exercise.
No, I
don't know.
But it should have changed something.
It has. It's changed the way I think, like about stuff. And thinking, is all we've really got, isn't it?
No, action is all we've really got.
Yeah, but without action does not happen without any thought.
Action happens through emotion.
Through emotion?
Yeah.
Or motion, did you say?
Emotion's feeling.
Yeah.
You don't think feelings.
This is where the language again comes into it.
Fact.
What's think? It's fact. Nothing's fact.
Emotions are feelings.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't think feelings. You feel
Well, what's
feelings.
think? Define think for me.
Define think. Think is where you're neurologically purposely thinking about something. You're purposely going through something.
Yeah.
You don't purposely want to cry. You fucking can't. You can't really. You can train yourself to do it,
Yeah.
but it's not an emotive action. You're not.
Yeah.
Emotions are feelings.
Yeah.
Okay, I pinch him, he'll feel fucking pain. He's not thinking pain. He's
Jacob
feeling
doesn't
pain.
feel pain.
So actions come from emotions.
Yep.
May I jump in?
I don't know.
If you want to speak, bro, I'm happy to listen.
Everyone, shut the fuck up. The prophet is speaking.
Yeah.
He has a prophecy.
A few weeks back, I listened to one of the interviews on impact theory by a guy called Naveen Jain.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest point I took out of that is he said, what's the thing that you want to teach the next generation or your children? He said intellectual curiosity. It's just being curious about how things work, how life works, how situations like this work.
Yeah, but exactly why, Jacob? Why the curiosity? What's the actual thing that you're trying to do?
Let him speak.
So I started about halfway through listening to Leonardo da Vinci's biography. And that was a big thing I've taken from...
Like, you're a hyper nerd, mate. You're going down that lane.
Yeah, and because I didn't know a lot about his story and who he was, but that's the biggest thing I've taken from it is his curiosity for just how everything worked.
I think all creators are, though, right?
Yeah, he was similar to like your Elon Musk of today in that he was curious about how the human body worked. So he went down and took action and dissected human beings and put that into his art. He was curious about one of the little notes he made in his book was describe the tongue of a woodpecker. And the guy was like, what a bizarre thing to do. But by looking into that, he worked out all sorts of things about how life works, how birds work, about engineering. And that's why I kind of got interested in this topic. It's why a week ago I was looking into the physics around string theory. It's just, is that going to have a measurable and massive impact on what I'm currently trying to take action towards? Perhaps not, but I believe the brain and the mind is like a muscle. The more you work it, the more you provide it stimulus.
No, you're coming from a different angle, mate.
So for me, this
Have
wasn't.
you chosen the angle I'm coming from? Obviously.
No.
I don't know. It sounded like
You're kind of looking for I think a scientific answer
Me?
as
I'm not looking for a scientific answer. I'm just questioning.
No, I
stuff.
think
The curiosity of that.
But
word-
why would you question? He questioned with purpose. Da Vinci questioned with purpose because he wanted to know and do something with. You can't argue with that. He did stuff with the information he collected.
Which contributed to the positive shift and movement of
Yeah.
humanity and the species in some way. Purpose. Elon's the same. Elon, I would agree 100%. He's curious, intellectually curious as fuck,
Yeah.
and taking the action and doing these things. You listen to the Joe Rogan, which is a really interesting episode. It's the same as the Da Vinci. You know, Elon's probably Da Vinci of the modern age.
I've never heard Da Vinci described as an engineer. I've heard inventor, an artist though. But I'm not sure. Clearly, he was an engineer.
Like, this is interesting, but
Engineer, inventor, almost interchangeable.
Okay.
if we acknowledge that it's plausible, then what?
Yeah, that's what I'm curious of, because if we're going to acquire the knowledge, what are we acquiring knowledge for?
Because the only way this serves, knowing this knowledge serves me, just reinforces that you only have a couple options in your life. Your life is still finite, and you've still got the constructs and the constraints of this reality. And then, all right, strip it all away. Well, now let's do something with it.
Maybe you can look closer into your current reality. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're looking at the shadows just now. Maybe you need to look away from the shadows and look somewhere else for something that's already around that you haven't seen.
Here's
stop
a bigger
dancing
question.
in the nightclub, mate. Look at it after.
Here's a
When
bigger
the
question.
shit on the floor.
If in our lifetime, technology evolved to a point where you can do what Musk is suggesting, that is download your brain, would you choose to do that, and why?
Well, a lot of my brain is, as he said, is already kind of...
Sure, but if you could purposely download your brain to put into another whatever, would you do it, and why?
A $27 ebook.
I don't have an ebook. What are you talking about?
That's Matt's brain. $27 ebook.
Maybe it was like people when I know there was a big, not craze, but 10 years ago or so with the placenta and the stem cells to keep that from your baby. Like nobody knew why, but it was like the option was there to do it. So I think if the option was there and I had the money, probably yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Why?
Exactly. I don't really know, but it sounds like a fairly good option if you want to preserve whoever you are, maybe.
Well, it could be a collection of memories. It could be obviously
For what reason? I mean, and
for your
Well,
children.
it depends.
I
That could
think.
be for your children, or as a legacy piece, or maybe there's some information within that you could go down the big data route, and once you've got hundreds of people, their brains put together, you could collate that and find.
create the real mastermind
That's already happening.
Napoleon
isn't
Hill
it?
was talking about.
I mean, big data, and Google have
It
certain...
is, but not from within our brain, but within
No.
within certain things like traffic and many other areas.
But I think where you're coming, Conrad, is like, all right, take a self-reflection. If your brain was to be downloaded, why? And I guess it comes back. Well, I feel like you're looping almost back to a little bit of that service track as well.
I've got a floppy disk, by the way, here for your brain.
Because
I've got a pill for that.
8 megabytes.
Which size, Mike?
Because I know you always kind of reference back to Gary Vee, but Gary's actually doing this. That's the point he does the vlogs. He's acknowledged that. He's actually trying to download, that's why everything's
Legacy
recorded.
stuff, yeah.
His legacy for his kids to watch, to go, fuck, that's the work that
And
went
his
into
kids'
it.
kids, and his kids' kids'
Yeah,
kids.
he acknowledges that. So he's kind of doing that with the current almost
Technology,
primitive technology we have today. He's using that in that methodology. And I guess the why, he's very clear on his why. Going back to where we're going with the eulogy, he knows his eulogy. He knows while he's recording it, and every action he takes every day is influencing that, because he knows he's being watched and he's going to be watched, and he knows what he wants in his eulogy.
Which is what I was trying to understand with what Mike is doing, because if it's something significant that that this information coming to you, which is significant information, right? You're challenging the construct of the world that everyone that is here or listening to you or around you lives in.
I'm still in the learning phase of that. I'm still in the just like
Pull the pin on it, mate. You're a living, breathing example of whatever the outcome is, of whatever stimulus you want to throw into this, right?
Yep.
I mean, and so if you're going to believe in that,
I think I need to put myself into a space where I am thinking about these sort of things to push myself.
What are you searching for, though? Why?
I don't know, man.
But this is
That's
what
what
I
I'm
said
saying.
before.
Enjoy the
But
journey.
knowing that this could be a simulation, Matrix or otherwise, what does it mean?
Yeah. What does it mean to you?
Justin touched on something before, is the distinction between software and hardware. Is that we talk about consciousness is essentially the software that runs on our biological hardware, being the brain and our kind of nervous system. It's a good like iOS runs on our phone, our consciousness, our brain.
Yeah,
our
I'm
thinking,
ICF.
Our dreams essentially runs on a biological hardware or like kind of operating system. That's this sort of philosophy of mind that is one of the assumptions of the piece we're talking about today, is that if it's simply software that's just run on a like biological hardware, then it can be something that we can run instead on a computer once we have the technology to realize how that works. The reason I think to download your consciousness or download your brain is to escape and supersede the limitations we have of our biological self. At the current life expectancy is, say, 100 years. And if you look at someone like Gary Vee...
83 for men and 86 for women.
Sorry, 100 is probably ambitious. It's probably potentially what we'll live to. However, if you could get to the end of your 70, 80 years, download that consciousness, and then plug it back into a 20-year-old kind of physically fit, ready to go for another 60 years body, then it gives you another 60 years to continue that legacy. If you think of the financial impact of compounding interest, if you think of the way that Gary Vee's trying to progressively grow his empire to buy the jets, if you could say, we'll download you into a thing, we'll give you 20 more years to get X billions to buy the jets, he'd do it. So that's one reason, is to continue to exceed your legacy and to push it further. Especially if you...
But if you're a Hindu, it happens anyway.
Yeah, but do you wake up and go, oh, cool, I've got the knowledge from yesterday and let's just crack on and continue?
But they believe that happens with the Dalai Lama, right? They believe the Dalai Lama is reborn. And they test that through testing his knowledge about things the Dalai Lama of the previous Dalai Lama has gone through.
Yeah.
That's a pretty fucking freaky thing. Then why do you download if this religious belief system already believes the fucking Matrix exists?
And even then, going a step further, why would you want that extension in life, or even going a step further in immortality? There's that great Netflix show, Carbon. I think it's just called Carbon, which is exactly that. You upload your conscious, it's backed up, and you can essentially immortal. You just
different bodies.
They call the body the sleeve.
Hannum's gone quiet here. He's a newly formed Christian Catholic. Are you absolving yourself from this? Otherwise, you're going to go to do confession.
No, I don't do confession.
Does not sound.
I confess daily.
I
think you probably need to.
No, you don't. You have the choice to do whatever you like. And the point I tried to get across to Mike a few times is that I feel like this is
therapy for Michael.
It seems to be the podcast thing, doesn't it? Like,
this is not about you, but about some of my experience in the past.
So
and
thanks
I feel
for
like
pointing at his experiences.
Shall we have a long pause? Would that be suitable? I feel like you're looking for a scientific answer still to assist with the purpose.
Science. I'm not looking for anything scientific.
In the past, I feel like I was looking for more rationale and more science to explain things, and I'm
actually doing the opposite.
So I think you have belief potentially, and potentially not faith. Look, this is what I'm getting from this. So I'm not, and it's not an attack. I've felt that similar path, and I think perhaps the faith piece is for me. Yeah, I'm looking at this.
I'm not looking for faith.
Faith in a master programmer.
Yeah.
Okay. So I might round this one out by just saying who
Why don't you
believes.
Just keep going. I'm not trying to stop you.
I'm finished. I believe that's what one of the balances. I think you're wanting to dig deeper into it to try and help explain some areas and how you might find a more finite way to articulate your purpose. Whereas
it's probably deeper than that. It's probably exactly what I said at the beginning. Nobody knows what the conscience is yet.
No.
So questions like this make me think about it differently. And I enjoy that. It's maybe a selfish thing. I enjoy that thought process, the curiosity of it.
But doing nothing with it is what because I reckon
I'm doing something with it. I'm like for myself. Connor, is that okay? Like, I mean,
I'd love to know because
I
how
can
do I
do
know?
it for you if you want.
Yeah, but what is it though? I want to know. I'd love to know.
Is it just a leisurely experience, like me playing video
If you
games?
put leisurely to it. I mean, that's.
But if like I can play video games, and
We're talking about the construct of life here.
the purpose
We're
of
challenging the
playing.
construct of life. This is not small.
I'm not trying to solve it for the world. I'm
Why
trying
not?
to solve it for myself.
But why would you not want to solve it for the world?
Can you think without action, though? What about like
can.
theoretical physicists take zero action? It's purely thinking.
But they're still
things
putting
that
out
don't
papers,
exist. Yeah, they're
reinforcing it with
trying
evidence.
to understand things.
Yeah, but-
at a level that we can't test. And
But that they're entertaining that conversation in a scientific space and pushing
Yeah.
the limits to enable those conversations. I guess the point is like.
I am just a mere Michael. Obviously, don't have the
But it's open. But it's open.
Mike might write this book in 10 years.
$27.
We'll be talking the simple minds of
Kindle still exists.
the simple minds in 300 years. Some
Yeah.
new manifestation of it. We'll be talking about Mike, and there'll be a new Mike and he will have a beard.
Yeah.
I'll do it for you, man.
But there's nothing wrong with like I think, maybe acknowledging that there's nothing like it's like reading for the sake of reading. Do you like enjoying these topics for the sake of enjoying these topics?
But what does that mean?
No, there's nothing wrong with
But
that.
there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the point. That's what we're asking.
I'm not trying to. I'm just saying. What does just saying? Are you doing it just to
Yeah.
do it?
I don't know.
it's kind of like non-fiction versus
Yeah.
fiction reading. Is reading a fictional story any less than a non-fiction just because it's not real and you're not going to like take out your notebook and apply it to your business? Like if you're reading about an adventurer or a story, like this is just trying to understand the human experience.
And that's okay. But that's what we're asking, Mike, you can't answer that. Whether it's just, are you going down these holes for the pure sake of joy and enjoyment?
Well, not joy.
Or
Of
you're looking-
curiosity.
Curiosity of what? Which comes
You
back
can
to
say of
Matt's
what-
question.
You can say of what of anything.
You haven't answered none of our questions. I'm sorry, Mike.
Okay, can I wind this up? I just want to go around the room quickly. And current today, just
You
what
can never go around this room quickly, mate.
And I am, because this is a one-word answer. Just
45
today,
minutes, yeah.
with what you've learned, and look, we've all had different levels of how much time. Like clearly, I'd say, Mike, you've
I'm on the
considered.
bottom level.
No,
I'm
no,
not
no,
very fucking like.
No, you're at the top.
You're just enjoying it, like fucking.
You're at the top level.
Yeah, you are.
I think you've
Perusing.
put the most thought into this. So what I'm saying, based on what we know now, do we believe we're in a simulation or not, Conrad?
Yes.
Jacob.
no.
Simulation being the word. I don't like the word.
This conversation, you just have to pick away.
Yeah, I know, but I just don't like the word.
No, I lean towards probably one or two.
Of
Of-
Nick's
of those three
paper,
options,
Of
yeah.
those three options.
So Mike's a yes.
I'm one. I'm extinct.
I give up.
I'm with you, Mike. We're playing in a Matrix, bro. I want to know what we're doing in this.
I think I took the brown pill.
No, that was shit. That was mouse poo.
Okay, JB.
I think it's plausible, but
Why do you think it's plausible, though?
I would
Exactly.
leave on maybe I'd be on Jacob as well.
That's not the answer.
I'll be on Jacob. What is that a sex position?
Oh yeah.
Not stimulation. We're saying.
Who would want to be on the prof?
But one or two, I'm going to challenge myself there and kind of make a decision. Is that
You said no. Oh, you mean
no to the simulation as in no to three, but I'm still sitting on the fence on one or two about whether we get to the point of having the technology to do this or whether we get there and we're like, why.
But that was the whole premise of the thing is that the technology is a given that it can happen.
Yeah, kind of one is on its own, then 2 or 3 is if we do it or if we don't do it.
I'm gonna go yes, because I think an AI could get to that level eventually.
Yeah.
If you're gonna answer the question 10,000 years, sure.
Or a billion years.
But so what? If we are in a simulation,
Cool.
I'm Batman.
You're Batman. You guys are all able to see things. I'm not feeling it right now. So my current answer is I don't believe it. But
Put your hands under the table.
what would I be?
You'd feel it then.
I'm on the opinion of so what? Like, yes, cool.
Exactly.
Like, I think
whatever you want.
I'm with you, Mike. Like 100%. I think asking the questions and thinking about it, I think it would encourage everyone. And if that's the message, then I think that's amazing. But I'm also with Conrad of like, well, what are you going to do with it? Because
I don't know.
you know, like, we are finite, and the only thing I take out of it is like, okay, I need to take some action. My time is limited, and I'm going to make the most of this time in this simulation if it is a simulation.
And
But if it's
that
not a
is
simulation, so
perfect
fucking
way
what?
to just line straight into Conrad's content. So Conrad, are you ready?
Time?
We've got time, mate.
Fuck, if they're still listening, they'll continue.
Yeah, I mean realistically, who would be listening to this still?
People that are on acid or DMT or something like that. I learned yesterday how to make your own ayahuasca using acacia bark.
Or something like that.
No, using acacia bark and vinegar.
It was like
So if you drive all the way down south, pound on the sides of the road, the acacia trees are all being stripped of their bark because these people are going there stripping bark and
DMT.
and boiling it in vinegar and making DMT.
Well, that's where our friends have been.
They're gnawing on fucking acacia trees. Anyway, we don't take drugs on this show.
Only whiskey.
So whether we're a simulation or not, when we approach the end of our life, or whether we're not, this is my segue into the eulogy piece.
Thanks, Jake.
Oh, yeah.
I like it.
Jacob said more today than he said in the last 2 podcasts.
I'm enjoying it.
3. Okay, eulogies, guys. I mean, I first came across this probably around 10 years ago when I was dealing with a friend who was being challenged with performing at their best. They were trying to qualify for an Olympic Games team, and they were struggling to connect. They had the capacity, had the talent, but they struggled to connect with putting it all together on any given day. And I came back and said, okay, why don't we start playing for fun again? Why did you come to this sport in the first place? What made you come back to this sport every other time during the season? Because it's not the hard work, it's not the coach yelling at you that does that, right? There's a lot of other things that make you go back to play. And so when you talk to elite athletes and the ones that have had success, they are still really connected with the why they showed up in the first place. But purpose seems to be something that we all have problems with for some reason. We have a problem articulating what our purpose is.
Not me.
You are. And there's a technique I came up with I didn't come up with it. I researched it, and it's something that I've used with people that do get stuck quite a bit because it puts them right on the precipice of. And I think
Is that why you gave it to me before? Like, is that
100%, Michael.
excellent? Thank you.
So when people get stuck with their purpose, I take them to an exercise of writing their own eulogy.
If we're in a simulation, writing yourself being downloaded.
Yeah. Yep.
It's
100%. If that's how you think it's going to happen, that's what should happen. Because
tangible version of starting with why, or beginning with the end in mind.
what's a vision version, right? I mean, it puts you right in that seat. Put yourself on the pedestal and imagine you're speaking from your loved one's perspective. And what do you want them to have
That's
to
what
say?
I've found hard with it, because I haven't actually done the full process yet, and I've always found it hard to which perspective or where do I put myself for it.
You put yourself in any one of your loved ones,
everybody apart from
whoever
you,
you want to deliver your eulogy.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's your creation, right? It's your manifestation. It's your vision.
Yep.
And to the point where you actually have to see yourself dying. And how do you die? You have to see that. Okay? It's not fantastic. It's not a great process. But you have to see that to feel that. Okay? And then you go through the process. And And the process, I mean, it's the process will put up on the blog thing.
The blog. Yeah.
The blog. So the first step is imagining your own death. Okay, so putting yourself in that space. The second step is then writing your eulogy, and like I said, pick a person that you would like to deliver it. Mate, fuck, if it's Will Smith, then make it fucking Will Smith. I don't care, but have somebody who you would want to speak on your behalf.
Better fucking outlive him.
Who, me? He's only a couple years older than me anyway.
No, I said I better.
Yeah.
That's-
So you want to talk about what they've accomplished in their life.
Definitely Morgan Freeman.
Who's the dude that read out The Alchemist on the audiobook?
Oh, Scar from Lion
Is
King.
he likely to be around?
Jeremy Irons.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Or James Earl Jones. He'd be good. He's Darth Vader, wasn't
So back to that. So you've got to discuss what people are going to want to see as value to them and what they want to talk about.
So is the idea here to really look at what you think maybe people think of you or what they've got from you?
Yeah, lessons you want to
Like
impart.
even like obviously truthful.
Yeah.
And
So we talked a couple of episodes back about Randy Pash talking at that last lecture, the lessons that he wanted to impart into his children. And this is the thing. So what are you living your life for? What lessons do you believe you've experienced or want to experience, and you want to show them? Yeah.
I feel like I'm a big fan's probably the wrong word, but I enjoy going to funerals. Not because they're a...
Do you know there was a craze about 3 or 4 years ago taking selfies at
I
funerals?
don't go to like random funerals, but
just find him popping up. Stephanie, can you please? Put
but
that
some people
quote
see
in?
it as like a mourning of death, whereas I see it as a celebration of life. And
100%,
I often
yeah.
learn more about an individual from their eulogy than I like, especially when it's like a partner's grandfather or a great uncle or something that you met in passing a few times. You had that kind of very, very shallow level conversation with a few times a year at family gatherings. But then you find out about what their ambitions were when they were 18 and they came to Australia, the love journey they went on when they met their partner, and you learn about these exciting, and they become relatable to you. They're no longer this 80-year-old great aunt. They're the 22-year-old kind of farmhand that met the stable boy, and it became like your grandparents. And that's kind of an exciting thing, is to learn this story. And you think, I wish I'd asked them when they were alive, so you could learn the whole story. Because you're obviously getting a eulogy is very rarely written by the person. It's a son or a daughter or a friend that writes it. It'd be great to hear someone's eulogy while they're still alive, and in their words and their story, in the way we get a lot of famous people write an autobiography or a biography. We know about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk now while they're potentially still alive as well. But the eulogy is an opportunity for every person to have their story told. It's just a shame we have to wait till they're gone.
We don't.
No,
with
you
there,
don't.
mate.
However,
You don't. You don't.
I'm definitely with you there. I get the same. I have the same response when I go to a funeral. It almost kicks with a bit of motivation at the end as well, to just it just reminds you of that finite position, and what,
Or infinite, depending upon what Michael suggests.
Okay, but you look at that as a marker, and you think, okay, am I doing what I should be doing right now? What shouldn't I be doing? But you're right, and this comes down to this documentation process. One thing that I was able to grab a hold of only, I think, last year was a series of just cassette tapes that had come from my uncle and and my auntie recording their grandparents, and they just put on record at a couple of family events and just ask them, tell me the story about this, tell me the story about that. And they were incredible to listen to. They were obviously very authentic and very candid, and they hadn't thought about it. They just started to rattle off these stories, and they were probably, I'd say, in their 80s at the time, and that's very powerful. And for that to happen then, we're going forward from this year onwards, we're going to have more and more ability to reflect back. There's going to be video, audio, photo, written word potentially of all of our relatives and of us for our legacy, so to speak, which is going to be really exciting, because it's quite powerful to as you say, learn about some of these things that you just had no chance to really understand in depth.
Yeah, and if you've got your brain saved on a disk somewhere,
Even
you've
better.
got that too. So I mean, it's like, and that's the extension of that, isn't it? So
Progressively easier to record these stories and journeys as well. Like the biggest thing I've taken away so far from Da Vinci's work is he took thousands of pages of notes and sketches and drawings of every little thing he invented that never became, and they weren't discovered until 200-300 years later, at which point people had to reinvent and rediscover these things because they weren't passed along the way they are these days. At the moment, a lot of knowledge is very incremental. We're just slowly building. It's like the new iPhone's just a slightly better version of the old one. We're not radically engineering or developing new things in the way that they were hundreds of years ago. And he invented all these great things, but his ideas were lost for hundreds of years because the process wasn't available then. That is available to us now.
Yeah, I mean, I had the privilege of writing my Umar's Eulogy 6 months ago at Christmas, and that's the first kind of funeral I've been to in a long time. It's the first family death that we've experienced, and that was quite an experience. And I took that from the same space of more of a celebration of life, and it does get you thinking about yours, and I guess taking action. And the podcast will be released before this. When we had Sam on. He was lucky to. I mean, he died he suggested he died for a few minutes and came out with a disability, and then his take on life. And I think the Stoics and Ryan Holiday and a few of those obviously reflect on mortality a lot. And you look at Gary Vee as an example of everything he does. In the back of his head, he's like, I gave you that thing or did that thing for you because I want you to rock up to my funeral.
Yeah.
I want 1,000 or 100,000 people at my funeral. It's coming that reverse engineering. It's kind of like he visions out and then reverse engineers back. And I think, you can link it back to, I agree with asking the questions of if you were to die tomorrow, what would you want your eulogy to say? And kind of Sam made the statement of if you died tomorrow, you served your purpose regardless here in this planet.
He has that belief that when you're dead, you whatever you were supposed to have achieved, you have achieved.
Oh, okay.
That's the place to say it. If you're lucky enough to be alive now, he's a Christian. He's a Christian.
Okay.
But if you are alive now, then your life's purpose hasn't been achieved. That's his belief.
Yeah.
And so the purpose is to figure out once you talk about what your achievements are, is then to work backwards from those and start setting yourself some goals and timeframes around those things, to put some real urgency into the situation. Sam also talked about, 3 ways of learning: easy, hard, and obviously traumatic, I think was the word he used. And most of us learn the hard way. Most of us don't learn the easy way, although we could indulge and think we'd love to. But some of us have learned through tragedy. Okay? I did a lot of my learning through tragedy, and I wouldn't wish that upon anybody.
I think that's where the biggest lessons come, or the most.
But they don't have to.
Imprinted lessons.
They don't have to. There are 3 ways that we can learn. We can learn easily, we can learn hard ways, or we can learn through tragedy. And this is circumventing tragedy. It's using tragedy to then drive your action. And we talked about he couldn't visualize that accident, right? But a lot of us have situations here. What would you do if your partner left you? If that's a tragedy to you, how would that make you feel? Is that enough motivation to deliver on the other end?
Because I guess that loops back to what you were saying, Jacob, of it's then the regret of I wish I asked those questions while they were alive. And I think the methodology of what you're suggesting here, Conrad, is okay, if they were to leave, what would I wish I did in the moment of the relationship if you're going to go down? Say
that's
that
right.
That micro path, which you could take on ACT today, which is almost a bit of gratitude, but that's also flipping it back to gratitude.
Yeah.
And even if you're in a simulation, it's I'm here now doing this in this moment.
Be grateful now. Do that now.
Do that. And I definitely acknowledge a lack of sense of urgency. And I think without our own mortality, humans, would we actually ever achieve and do anything? Looping it back to the other element too, because I think facing that, and I don't do it enough. I haven't personally written my eulogy. I know, Conrad, in the early days, you've asked me to write it down, Even Sam suggested he's got a 2030 vision, and I definitely don't have a 2030 vision. I may have maybe 2 to 5-ish years, but I definitely don't have 40 to 50 years. And I remember, Jacob, you asked Tash, what does the next 40 years look like for you? And she went through, her cancer scare, and obviously that's a tragedy moment, number 3, which flips the whole perspective on life. And that she still couldn't answer that either, which is crazy. But the energy that comes out of these people who really acknowledge either their eulogy or their vision, we've all experienced it around people who I think are very conscious of it. They do have more energy than
their
the
fire
average.
is massive.
Yeah,
I think the longer someone can project forward, but still have clarity in that future, the more energy they've got in the present. Like if you look at someone like Elon Musk, who's looking at 2050, landing on colonizing Mars, like he's got
Did you move to
visions.
2050? I thought it was 2025.
Well, how did he wrap? He wrapped
Yeah.
out that podcast with so much positivity, even though he comes across a little bit like almost the opposite. But he's
That's
still
it.
got such a positive outlook, an optimistic
Because he was
outlook.
looking at like beyond, his vision goes beyond his lifetime. It's, I want to lay the foundations for future of humanity, multi-planetary. And then he's gone backwards and gone, cool, we need to have colonization on Mars. We need to have, and his impact and his component of that and his goal and his plan is going to be SpaceX.
Because his vision is massive. It's massive. It's big enough to drive you there and then fall backwards, right? And going through the exercise, like even my vision for Inspired Money was to impact all Australians. Now, that's what's driven me to do what I do. Now, nobody I know from a small space here, from a financial planning place with 3 advisors, think they can impact Australia. But you can.
But I think we should also put a caveat on that your life vision can also be, we talked about this in one of the podcasts, can be smaller scale. And it can be
For sure. It can be anything you want it to be.
But I think that's the purpose of writing a eulogy of like, my grandma died knowing that she was happy, like prior through her cancer experience, because of just the family network and the structure of that. And they were, her and my upa had a great relationship and they were humble and that's all they needed. So she satisfied her vision and her purpose throughout her lifetime. And so I think just to maybe caveat the large vision that we talk about, and I think that's the power of probably doing this exercise or even just thinking about it and contemplating it is hugely beneficial.
Because you could write your eulogy and it could be, was a mother of 2, stayed at home and raised 2 great children. They've gone on to do this, this, and this. They enjoyed playing squash on the weekends and had 3 cats. And as long as if you can write that and be like, I'm perfectly okay with that, then you reverse engineer it and go, cool, my goal is to, and especially the point 4, take action.
Thanks for introducing that.
I was going to say,
Thanks,
what is
Jacob. So point 4 is take action. Go for it, buddy.
what's the goal of it in the end? Like
An action plan.
Because you're then not going to spend 60 hours a week working in a job you don't enjoy. If that's your end goal, the action will be spend time, be in the moment, travel with your family, and go all in on that. As long as you know what you're trying to achieve, you work backwards and go, what are the steps? And then you take deliberate
Like a
action
great business
towards
plan, right?
achieving.
Keep coming back to it.
Yeah.
Have you delivered it? No. Why not? Change it, iterate it, move on. But take steps.
And you also...
Eulogy is like the conclusion or the like executive summary of a business plan, but for your life.
I'd say it's a business plan, bro.
Yeah.
$27 on
But it's
ConradFrancis.com.
for some of us, like,
Well, most of us don't even have a damn will because we fear mortality that much.
I'm the opposite. Is that like I don't fear or perhaps I do. I don't fear mortality as much as I don't give it enough respect. I don't have a will because I don't think that's something that's going to happen to me. Obviously, it will. It'll catch up with me one day. But
That's just ignorance, then, right?
I see death as when I'm 90, not when I'm 29, and that could be drastically wrong, and it could fuck shit up for me. But
I think
it's risk mitigation.
But I
anyway.
think that's I think, Matt, you had something as well, but just to add on there, I think that's the importance of writing a eulogy, because what if it wasn't 90, it was 40, because the outcome's still the same, because the age is not the matter, the achievement and the impact that you have to the individual.
Or at least trying to get there.
Or trying to get there, which is the journey, it doesn't matter. So like whether, I think that is probably disserving you by pushing it out to I'm going to live till 90, because there's no sense of urgency. And I'm saying this for my own benefit too, of like, I think by writing the eulogy in terms of maybe an achievement or an impact or a serving piece, which we've been talking a lot lately, which I've really been enjoying, that's the that's the influence. And so therefore it doesn't matter whether you live till tomorrow or you live till kind of 90, because if you're taking actions and steps towards that eulogy for tomorrow, the actions you took today or tomorrow took you a step forward. So therefore you actually achieved your eulogy regardless.
Yeah. Is it Parkinson's law that says that a task will fill the space you give it? And if you give a lifetime for your legacy, then you'll take it out and you'll fill it. Whereas if you go, I've got to achieve that legacy, but in 10 years or 1 year.
And I'm guilty of like, which is that whole of like, I'll start that thing on Monday.
Yeah, I've got time, especially when you're a business owner like we all are.
And I'm guilty of
no one's there kind of going, the due date for this assignment is 4 p.m. on a Friday. We just know we can drag it out a little bit. We'll get those leads tomorrow.
But it's the due dates, the pressure and the deadlines that actually allow you to push through.
Yeah.
And you talked about that the other day, Conrad, the action part of it. It's not about the motivation. It's not about anything, any of the fluffy stuff around it. It's that
not inspiration, not motivation. It's taking action. Yeah,
and that's one thing.
Confidence cannot happen without action. Yeah. So people saying, I'm not confident. Well, take some steps.
And that action is karma. Action is that inertia moving forward.
Yeah, it's moving. Yeah.
Making that groove in the universe, whatever you want to call it, and that's what. Yeah.
In the simulation.
Yeah, exactly.
Cutting cheese.
We'll just jump in. We've moved on a little bit, but just you sort of jumped in and brought up serving, and I think that's a big part of. You even mentioned with obviously your grandma. I'm not sure exactly the love name or Uma. So
German.
So
for grandma.
you mentioned that, but who do you serve? And something that a memory that was triggered for me is when I was first traveling through Europe, and you go and look at these amazing buildings, and you might look at a church, and there was 5 or 6 or 7 architects that worked on that building as it was being built, and architect number 2, 3, 4, and many other people through that entire process. They would have known and devoted their entire life to that, not expecting to probably have ever seen the end result or final achievement, but they've just made the decision and knew that their purpose was to serve that outcome on the way through.
They would have seen the final result, but they wouldn't have seen it physically.
No, not physically. But and that's we don't have to achieve something necessarily. We just have to work out who we're serving.
Because usually, and this happens a lot, right? If you don't get to finish what it is you started, God bless legacy, someone else picks it up.
And that's not a bad thing.
No. It's actually the continuum that you really want.
The energy's been pushed that way and somebody else has gone with it.
Yeah.
I guess that comes back to Randy about the lessons that he wants to impart, because he didn't could be wrong, because you don't even necessarily need to pass on a vision, because you can pass on the lessons which will enable them to live a better life and to execute on a better life as well. So on the architect, I was at the Sagrada in Spain, which is something that
amazing piece of architecture.
It's just mind blowing.
I've not seen it physically. I've seen it in pictures.
The energy there is.
Who was
crazy.
The architect? It eludes me.
He was killed before it was finished. Funnily enough.
Yeah, he was, and he only built like one facade. And you look at the picture.
Gaudi.
Gaudi. Yeah, he was in that book, The Origin.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So I went there recently, like 3 weeks ago, and that was just a phenomenal experience. And to see his vision carried out with small adjustments here or there, and his iteration process. But I guess as well on the legacy piece, it's even just the teachings or the influence or the impact.
And it's tiny things. Tiny things can make that little bit of influence. Like one little glance at somebody and a hello to somebody walking past. You never know what that ripple can do. So
have you written yours, Conrad?
I've written several.
Several
Yep.
different versions.
I won't ask actually.
Sorry.
I was going to ask you how you died in a few.
How
did you approach that part of it?
I at the moment I'm sitting with a heart attack. That's how I've passed away in my sleep, and
When you
Because lack of.
The narrow
You
window.
don't sleep, Bill Conrad. How can it
it's a
possibly?
narrow window. It's probably the way I would prefer to die, to tell you the truth.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Statistically, it's more likely while you're awake.
but I'm not a statistic that plays with it.
Even more statistically with how much you're
I
awake.
play in the
He's the
80-20.
He's the 1%er.
So yeah, that's where it is at the moment for
And
me.
do you actually? I mean,
And I have video recorded the latest one. It's the first video I've done.
of the eulogy.
Yep.
I thought you meant of you having a heart attack.
And how has that evolved over time?
How's it
From
evolved?
your first eulogy to your perhaps most recent?
Probably just broaden the impact largely. There's not a lot of change from what it is I'm wanting to do as opposed to how many people I want to have an impact over.
When do you feel you need to change it again? Like, what's the?
Just intuition.
Yeah. Okay.
So is that challenging yourself of like, yeah, that and then that wrapping into that self-belief through recent achievements of like, actually, it could be bigger.
Yep.
Let's go bigger.
Yep.
Has anyone else thought about it or have a larger? Because it wraps into, I guess, your purpose, right?
100%. But it makes it very hard for anyone to really knock me off my journey. You know, and
You're on a solid journey. You are. No,
Oh, for
you
sure.
Are. Seriously.
and
I can feel that.
And then that's the thing. You know, I believe whatever the time frame that might evolve within, I don't care. I don't care what the time frame is. It's just I have to be moving forward.
And if your eulogy was required next week,
Yep.
what would it look like? Would you read it and be like, I'm happy with that?
Right now, yeah, fuck oath.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm ahead of the game at the moment.
I can see that. Conrad, loving father, friend to many, man of action.
That's
Batman.
it.
Batman. Yeah, and it's fun, man. But this is the thing. It's to me, when we talk this shit, it's confronting. But fuck, I get goosebumps telling you this stuff. This shit gives you purpose.
Yeah.
It really does.
You guys all know when you started the business, the excitement of planning, where's it going to be, what's it going to look like, who are we going to impact, like writing that plan out. I'm a little bit excited about perhaps looking at the equivalent of for my life as well. So like business is for many or it should be for everyone, an extension or an arm of your life or a reflection of who you are. And
It's a tool for you to be the better version of you.
yeah.
That's all it is. It's
So
just
that's
a
a
tool.
component of it. The whole, your life, is
Yeah.
an even bigger piece to unlock. And I know a lot of the questions we commenced with today is, Michael, your process of understanding where you fit into the universe, what your purpose is here, what the future looks like for humanity, and there's a curiosity around that I share and I enjoy finding more about. And if you get to the end of the journey and you simply say, Michael was a curious man who wanted to know more about where he fit into the world, like
As long as he doesn't go down the path of the Wojciechowski sisters,
I'd be okay with that.
be a curious girl then.
I've written my eulogy. It just says why. Question mark.
Is it read by Conrad?
Yeah, just Conrad says.
Just Conrad.
Yeah.
Have you done this exercise?
I've attempted it.
You've been quiet.
I've attempted it a couple of times, but not seen it right the way through.
Where are you at now with, it's been a massive journey for you. No, I mean,
No.
It's been, with no disrespect, you're a little bit further in life than a couple of us as well. And it's a massive exercise. And obviously with the awareness of this group, you've been challenged big time on this. And I think a lot of people who are old, further in the journey of life.
He did say old.
I did say old.
That's what he's saying, pretty much. Yeah.
You are old.
I'm actually older than you, Michael, so I'm
Yeah.
getting massively offended right now.
But my point is that I'm very grateful that we're being aware of this at such an early age, and I think a lot of
And
people
that's a big
leave
thing
it.
with me is that I was probably asleep. I've had a great life.
Yep.
Absolutely no question whatsoever. I've had a brilliant life, and I'm blessed to have the kids, my wife, and friends like you guys around me. But I've been asleep a lot of the time in my life in regards to seeing the bigger picture. So that's the journey I'm on just now.
And I don't actually know. I mean, and I journaled this the other day. Self-judgment is one of the hardest and most toxic things to do. Self-reflection's fantastic. Self-judgment's tough.
I'm not judging that I've been a bad person or
No.
or not
But
done.
even to say, I mean, acknowledge. You can acknowledge your shit as long as it's not negative in the sense that you wish it didn't happen because it fucking happened.
No.
Yeah.
I'm forever grateful for the
Yeah.
life I've had so far, and I'm enjoying the learning at this age, which you guys, well, Matt, you're what, 10 years
in the middle.
younger.
Yeah.
You're in the middle. But I mean, Jacob, Marco.
Well, statistically, you and I are past halfway through our life, mate. Statistically,
Yes.
we're on the downward slide.
We are. Our cells are slowly
Yeah.
dying. Yes, they are. So I'm stoked to be thinking about stuff like this just now at my age. And having a new lease on life because of thinking like this. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Like, I'm just really excited to be
Yeah, cool.
being 27 again, or like maybe thinking I am, or knowing that there's a massive amount of time still left. So I don't know. And that's what I love about this group is the diversity in age, in race, Conrad. And no, that's what I really do. It's something that has gelled for me over my last few years. Is just like, man, age doesn't matter actually.
No.
Age doesn't matter. And I'm searching for my why. Of course I am, and I think we all are. I think Conrad, you're a lot further ahead.
But it does evolve, guys. This is the reason why it's interesting to start because it's not final. Your purpose today is not finite.
And that's what, with the simulation theory, thinking about that is that it isn't finite. There's who knows what it is. We don't know what it is. And that's the sort of question I like, and knowing that, and maybe that's the thing that is driving me forward.
But it's what fuels me, right? This stuff fuels me. The actions and what the outcomes are, they fuel me. That's the dopamine hits I'm chasing, is kicking those things.
Yeah. The action part I'm learning, that's the thing that at your age, man, that action lesson is like freaking gold. Like, and it's very hard with, like, I'm trying to do the same with Sam, my son, and Emma, but they're teenagers.
But the young age also provides the challenge of I've got the time to do.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. When you get to our age, you do start. The reflection must be inbuilt in us to reflect back on what's been happening. So to have that sort of more mature knowledge at your age is yeah, man, use it, use it wisely.
Because I think I don't know where I got this from, because when I was in Europe, I did a lot of digesting of content and
digesting of food and wine. I
yeah,
suspect.
and taking in Galdi's life works. And I don't know where I got this, but it goes, because life is about figuring it out, stuffing it up, failing and suffering. Learn to love to fail. Don't dwell on it. I've messed up and continue to mess so many things up, but I know I'll figure it out and continue on. If you haven't figured it out, it doesn't matter. It's the journey and the process. If you say you tried, that's all that matters. And I think that's the most important line, which is the action piece. To say that at least you tried is all that matters. Yeah. And I think that's pretty powerful.
Is this your
No, this isn't my own thinking. I have, unfortunately, I haven't got the source here, which I need to learn to get better at when writing these notes. It would have been from one of the impact theory.
But isn't that exactly what we're talking about? Somebody said something. You don't know who it is. Doesn't matter. But
no,
there's a lesson in there. So.
Yeah, and it's just, I think the action piece, which Conrad, obviously you're very big on love late, and there's probably a massive frustration in your life around a lot of elements that we're aware of. Yeah, and I think even Matt and I were talking about it prior to the podcast, and for me that's been highlighted strongly this week, even with the conversation with Sam, which if you haven't listened to that episode yet, go check it out. It's taking action in those moments, no matter what, and you don't necessarily have tomorrow, you don't necessarily have next week, you don't have next year. At least saying that you gave it a shot, because being surrounded by someone who has faced those things really gives you an energy boost to go, fuck, I've got to sort my shit out.
The biggest thing I got from Sam is if you're still here and you're alive, you've got something left to achieve. There's a purpose there.
Well said.
You've still got an impact. He feels deeply and believes that circumstances could have had him die in that accident. However, he's still here. And he made the comparison to his youngest brother who passed away from cancer when he was in his early 20s. He said his journey is finished and he's achieved everything he was here to achieve. And whereas I'm still alive, I'm still here, and I've still got something. And he talks about taking action, being deliberate, being okay with where you're at, but also be curious and be longing for what's next.
Be bold.
Be bold, yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we'll probably wrap it up there, guys. But an interesting episode and a little different in conversation. But for those of you still listening, we're about to move into an interesting conversation, I'm sure, right now. But
And get the guys to leave us a comment of if they think they're living in a simulation or not.
we would love to find that out.
Fill me up, must be.
Or ask Mike his why.
Don't.
If you want to
If you
ask
can get it out
Mike
of
his
Mike,
why,
if you get
you
it out of
can
Mike,
find
we'll pay you for it.
We'll get you on the show.
Please share, like, review, do all those things for us. We enjoy putting this show together for you, but we want to make it the best for you. So let us know what you want us to talk about. Just let us know if you think we're in a simulation. So until next time, Jets.
Champagne.